Hey, what's going on everybody? It's etaprime back here again. Today we're going to be testing out the Intel ARC A750 GPU. Now the price on this brand new is $249, and from what I've seen so far, it's actually not a bad deal for the price on a new GPU. And Intel has actually been on a roll updating drivers for these new ARC GPUs. And when it comes down to it, we've got AMD, Nvidia, and now we've got a new competitor to the modern day dedicated GPU market, which is Intel. So they do have a lot to gain when it comes to drivers. AMD and Nvidia already have a really nice fleshed out ecosystem when it comes to their drivers for their GPUs. And of course, with newer drivers for both AMD and Nvidia, we do see a boost in performance. But I think with Intel being so new to the dedicated GPU game, with their newer drivers, I think we're going to see even better performance down the road. Now, I will tell you, I do think that this is one of the best looking graphics cards on the market right now. It's the Intel ARC A750 limited edition version. And personally, I just think it looks really good. We've got that black and silver design, no RGB, but we do have that Intel ARC lit logo over on the side. A little plain Jane for some people, but personally, I think it looks really good inside of a system. Now, obviously, I've already got this installed in one of my PCs, but another reason I wanted to pick this up was for external GPU usage. I actually wanted to test out Intel ARC externally over Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 4, and USB 4, so definitely keep an eye on the channel because I will have a video like that coming up. But with this one here, I've paired it up with one of my favorite little builds. We've got an Intel i5 13600K, 32 gigabytes of DDR5 running at 6400 megahertz, a 2 terabyte Kingston Fury NVMe SSD, an ASRock Z790 Tai Chi Carrera motherboard, 800 watt Corsair power supply. This is going to be running Windows 11 Pro, and of course the Intel ARC A750. We've got 8 gigabytes of GDDR6, 28 Xe cores. It's got a base clock of 2050 megahertz, but I've seen it boost up to 2400 megahertz, and that's kind of where it stays. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure if it's because of the special edition, but I have tested the A770, it was an ASRock version, and it boosted up to the same clock there. Given the build here, we're not going to be held back by the CPU at all when it comes to gaming, so we can really get the full potential out of this A750. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and see how this thing performs. We're going to be starting out here with Spider-Man Miles Morales, and for this one I did want to show you the settings because I was really surprised that the A750 could do this. We're at 1440p, high settings, no resolution scale. We're not using any kind of XeSS, FSR, or dynamic. So we'll just go down the board here. You can see all of that's turned off. We're at 1440p, and we've got it set to high. So at 1440p, high settings, with no scaling, we can actually get an average of 78 FPS out of this game. So far, what I found with this card here, it's a good 1440p high setting card, or 1080p Ultra. So we're not looking at, 4090 or even 4080 performance here, but the price doesn't reflect that either. Coming in brand new at $249, not bad so far. Next thing I wanted to take a look at were a few benchmarks, and first up we've got Geekbench 6 OpenCL. So this is just testing the A750. We got a total score of 95,181. Now this also supports ray tracing, but of course it's not going to be on par with something like an NVIDIA 4000 series. But I did run the 3D Mark DirectX ray tracing feature test, and our average frame rate here was 29.81 FPS. Next up, 3D Mark Firestrike with a 28,326, and the final one here is Time Spy with a 13,370. Taking a look at that graphics score, we're right there, close to 13,000 just on the GPU itself. So overall, not looking bad so far with these synthetics, but I did want to test out some more real-world gaming to see what this thing can really do. So here we have Injustice 2 4K high settings. I went into this hoping we could do very high 4K, basically maxed out. But unfortunately, at very high settings, it was dipping down to around 57 FPS when there were lots of particles on screen. Of course, you can mix this up with a very high setting at 4K, but I just took it all the way down to high here, and we're getting a constant 60 out of it. Personally, I really can't tell the difference between very high and high at 4K with this game. I still think it looks absolutely amazing. Dirt 5 is one I always like to test. We're at 1440p high settings, and I actually wasn't expecting to get this kind of frame rate out of it. We got an average of 98 FPS, and this is with no dynamic resolution scale. So I do think we could go up to very high settings with this at 1440p and kind of lock it right there at 60. But yeah, this is one of those games that gives a lot of GPUs and CPUs a run for its money, but it's fully playable here at 1440p on the A750. Moving over to Elden Ring, 1440p max settings. So I was super excited going in here, but you'll see Afterburner dip down to around 57 FPS every once in a while. I probably wouldn't notice the dip if I didn't have a frame counter on, but I wanted to show you this because at max settings, there is a chance in some situations you'll get under 60. I know that GTA 5 is definitely an older game, but personally I still like playing single player mode, so I do like testing it out. We're maxed out here very high all the way across the board, 1440p, and I'm getting an average of 172 FPS, so I figured 4K isn't out of the question here at very high settings, so I just went ahead, turned the resolution up, still at very high, and we can now average 103 FPS with this game. I know it's older, but I still wanted to show it because there are people out there that still love playing this game, like myself. I also wanted to test Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. And I like using the built-in benchmark, just goes over a lot of stuff here. And with this game here, it left me wanting a little more with the A750. I expected it to do a bit better. So with the first run here, I'm at 1440p, but I used recommended settings. And as you can see, the rendering resolution did go down to 76%. We're at ultra quality with Intel XeSS. We got an average of 76 FPS and a low of 56. Of course, this is still really playable like it is, but I wanted a bit more out of it. So I went ahead and took the resolution down to 1080p, turned scaling off completely, and we got an average of 94 FPS, and our low was over 60, coming in at 63. Now there's no doubt we could run this at 1440p, but we'll have to take some of those settings down to medium and even low. So 1080 is really where it's at with this game here. I also wanted to test out God of War 1440p high, no scaling. We got an average of 75 FPS. So I thought we'd be able to run this at 1440p high settings. And if you needed more out of it, of course, we've got resolution scale that we can mess around with. You can do the static scale or you could use FSR. It's really up to you. But it's fully playable at 1440p high. And the final PC game we have here is Cyberpunk 2077, 1440p medium. Without any scaling on, high is a little out of the question at 1440p, but you could always go up there at 1080. But with it set up like this, we got an average of 74 FPS. Personally, I just don't like using scaling. I don't mind using it myself in my free time, but when I'm doing these tests, I kind of like to have it off just to see what these things can really do. Now there was one last thing I wanted to do here and just check out a little bit of emulation with PS3 using RPCS3. Of course, we've got that i5 13600K, which is going to run any emulator that you can throw at it right now. But your GPU choice does play a big role in upscaling these from native resolutions, or even running them at native resolutions. So what I did here was take this up to 4K, and if you're familiar with this PS3 emulator, you know Skate 3 is a harder one to emulate. But it looks like this ARC A750 can definitely handle PS3 emulation at 4K quite well. There's a lot of other emulators I'd actually like to test with this GPU, so if you're interested in seeing a video like that, let me know in the comments below. But remember, if we paired this up with a 3rd gen Intel CPU, we wouldn't be able to run this at 4K. It wouldn't even run this game because the CPU is playing a huge role when it comes to emulation. To tell you the truth, going into this, I wasn't expecting much out of the A750, and it really comes down to listening to other people. Of course, when it comes to choosing, let's say an RTX 3070 or the A750, I would go with the RTX 3070 all day long. It's going to give us much better performance. But we can't buy a brand new RTX 3070 for $250. You definitely have to go used with it. And right now, if you take a look at eBay, used 3070s are going anywhere from $330 up to $375, depending on the variant. And even 3060 Ti's are $300 to $350 used right now. Actually, there is 1 gigabyte for $329, which really isn't a bad deal. But there's been a lot of people out there making these out to be, very low-end cards that can't even do 1080p, and I'm really impressed by the A750 for what we have here. I can personally recommend something like this if you know what you're getting into. But if you've got the extra money, I would pick up a 3070 for sure. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Really appreciate you watching. I will have one more video coming up with the Intel A750. I want to test this in my eGPU dock. We're going to test over Thunderbolt and USB 4, and one of the big reasons I like these eGPUs is because we've got a lot of new handhelds on the market that are powered by Ryzen, and they do support 40 gig USB 4, so we can connect an eGPU and basically turn it into a full-fledged gaming PC. So if you're interested in seeing a video like that, make sure you hit that subscribe button and think about turning notifications on so you know when I post the next one. And I'll also leave some links down below in case you want to learn more or maybe even pick up an Intel A750. But that's it for this one. And like always, thanks for watching.